All right. Jeez. I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name's Connor Murdoch. I'm a first-year MBA at Sloan. And for this competitive advantage session, we're going to have Aiden Lyons, who's a vice president of fan-centric marketing at the NFL, presenting using data, analytics, and technology to bring NFL fans closer to the game. The presentation will run for 30 minutes, and that will include any Q&A that he decides to do. Thank you.
Morning, everybody. Good to see everybody on this nice spring morning in Boston. I've already been warned twice about the time, so I'm going to try and move as quickly as possible. So if anyone has questions, we can get to them. Okay, so we just got a quick overview, top challenges we had, solutions that we built out, and then some results to go over you, so that the sex of the metrics that we've done. What I'd like to do is just give a brief background of myself, more because it'll feed into the story of what we built out and how we brought the ecosystem together. I started at the league about 8 years ago. I actually looked in at the career guidance or the career module this morning. And it's funny, I was working in e-commerce, selling women's dresses online, and then I went to the NFL. And I'll say that my experience of selling women's dresses online has stood me the test of time at the NFL now. Great experience. But I started on the digital side, came in, started working with digital analytics, email, SEM, and we were a very small group. We just launched NFL.com. And over time, what I witnessed was we brought in our clubs on board. We launched our own fantasy game. We launched our own subscription products. We launched the explosion of mobile, then the explosion of social. So all this time, I saw this growth of data exploding. And we were doing a very good job on the aggregated level. We weren't doing such a great job on the fan level. And this is kind of irking me all the time in the back of my head. So that's kind of a background where I came from. And then as we go through the presentation, I'll show you where I moved into this newer role and kind of where the two things collided and met. So what do we want? What's our mantra? What do we want to do? We want to, find the right fan, give them the right experience at the right time, on the right channel, the right device. Because we all know in the world we live in today, fans are interacting with our brands every minute of the day. If you look at Google, they throw out their micro moments every chance they can. And if you think of our sport, there's micro minutes every game, even in the off-season, draft coming up with Combine. You've all these moments that fans are interacting with us that we need to take advantage of, and we need to give them experience which enhances the experience at the point in time, particularly for their life cycle in a fan, because what is very different when I work on the league level and when I work with our clubs, on the league level, a lot of our fans are displaced. They don't even get to go to a game, but yet they still have a rich experience with on-screen and mobile. And then when I work with the clubs, the focus with some clubs is more on that local fan, that local engagement, getting the fans to come either experience a game or experience the club and that community. So I named our group Fan-Centric Marketing because I wanted to put the fan at the center. I wanted us to think about the fan. I didn't want to think about, as a data point, a conversion, an impression. I wanted to put the fan at the center. And each time you think of one of these metrics, you're touching a fan. And you should think of that as a point where you have to enhance that experience and also improve that experience. What I will say is we partnered with two vendors, particularly for this project. One, Epsilon, which is a Boston-based company. I know it's worldwide and global now, but the role of Epsilon is primarily to understand that fan and bring all these touch points together and give us that single view of the fan as best we can. And on the Adobe side, I'll show my age here. I was working with Adobe back when they were called Omniture. And now they're the Adobe Marketing Cloud. And what we use them for is more the activation of that fan experience, both on and off site, through the way we structure the data. So sadly, this is the last 3.5 years of my life, which is pretty sorry that I fit it onto one slide. But essentially, where I left off when I said I'd worked on the digital side and come to this point and was frustrated with how we did everything well on an aggregated level, but we weren't getting to the fan level. On my soapbox, I talked about disparate databases. I talked about not having a single view of our fan. And obviously, the solution was to build an integrated database, which we did. And we launched that in 2013. What was the most interesting part of that is A lot of our clubs that we work with would come back to me and say, Aidan, I need you to help me with this. Hey, Aidan, I need you to help me with that. And what kept coming back to me was, I'm like, well, if we had your data with our data, then we could better understand the fan and we could do a better job of marketing. And one of the key components that is actually exclusion marketing, right? So people always talk about the target audience. We spend very little time talking about who not to market to. And that was key with our clubs, and that we found, like, if you are doing a season ticket offer, you need not to send a season ticket offer to someone who's already a season ticket marketer. And it also helps, particularly when you start to push data into Facebook, if you use exclusions, it's going to help you with those marketing metrics, right? Because you're not going to be paying for people that you already have. So that was a key component in bringing our clubs on board, which was a long process. We have 25 clubs on board. And as you know, you go from along the arrow to 2014, it came more about how do we feed the mouths, how do we get all these stakeholders we have and make sure that we're giving them what we need to do to deliver so they meet their goals, but at the same time, keeping the fan at the center to make sure that we're not over-communicating them, we're not sending them duplicate offers, we're not ruining that experience, and getting to that touch point and actually telling them, you're important to us, we want you to have the best experience possible. And it does become interesting when we go in later and we show you a profile of a fan that each fan is very different, and each touch point is very different, and how you make sure you enhance it is particularly important. As we move through 2015, another component we brought in our institutional media, which is all our TV and every asset within the league that we use it. So again, the component is let's bring it all together. Let's make sure we're one singular voice, one campaign, and reaching out to that fan. Now, as we've gone through this journey, what we've realized that personalization becomes very important. And like I said, personalization is important, but you need to get it right. So what we found and what we struggled with is we had a lot of data, so we were data rich. We weren't delivering it in a lot of places. Primarily, we're delivering it through email and then also through some on-site experience. So I think the key thing as we move forward is to use that data not only when a fan is engaging with us in email, but engaging with us on site and when we do a media buy. So again, you can use this data to get that right message at the right time, on the right platform, in the right point in time for that fan. So we have a lot of work to do this year, particularly getting that component built out, but that's what our main focus is for 2016, is integrating with our CMS, using it more for media buys. I have Teresa's going to laugh at me now, I have the great buzzword, the data lake up there. But essentially what we found out and how we build things out, in order to crunch all this data and make it actionable, which is the key component about this, make it actionable, is what we had was just too slow. It would take us 2 weeks to do a fan journey. So then that's when I realized, okay, now I know what Hadoop is, and now I have to go use it because I actually have a working reason why I need this data faster. Right? It's not a case of I saw something I wanted, it was like, we're there. So that's the key components of this year, integrating with our own properties, CMS, paid media, data lake, personalization, again, getting to that point, right message, right time for our fans. Key objectives for last year, expanding market channels, which I kind of touched base on, improving the fan experience, again, which I touched on, and then enhance fan profiles. Like expanding the market channels, like I said, last year we expanded to push notifications, we expanded to paid media. Improving the fan experience, again, goes to about knowing the fan and delivering the right offer. And then also the enhanced profiles was about overlaying third-party data onto it. So you have all first, second, and third-party data in creating these fan profiles. So what we do is we put the data and the tools at the primary focus, right? And if I list the tools, it is Adobe Audience Manager, Adobe Analytics, Adobe Campaign, Epsilon for data warehousing and mining the data, Harmony for emails, then we do on-site personalization via DFP, and then we use Domo for data visualization. So, I mean, that's the breadth of tools that we're using right now. Like I said, this year we're adding the data lake. So the key component is you want to acquire the fan, you want to keep them engaged, and then you want to retain them. So I actually had a conversation with gentleman outside earlier, and I think the key thing for us is data is becoming a commodity. We can all get our hands on the data. It's what you do with the data and the tools you use to make that data actionable, the key things, right? We can all go build a repository of all the data of all our consumers, of all our fans everywhere and what they're doing. If you don't do anything with it, then what's the point? And that's why the tools and what you do with the tools are so important. And that's also where I'll be honest, when I worked on the analytics side, I'd get frustrated because you would do all this great analysis and it would just sit there. So when I came into this role, I'm like, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to have the analysis. I'm going to action upon it. I'm going to have results. I'm going to have wins and losses. And from my wins and losses, I'm then going to do something different than I did last year. So that was key for me. It's about how you make it actionable as opposed to, a great PowerPoint with, some slides on it, whatever. So I think that's key for me. All right, so this is nitty-gritty. This is how we make it actionable. This is the actual strategy and the integration. So the key thing here is, like I spoke about, we have our fans engaging us on multiple platforms. There's multiple touch points with multiple different IDs and data coming in both from online, digitally, offline, social, everywhere. So what we need to do is bring that data together, create a single view of that customer, and map it together, and then do our segmentation and analysis, and then push it back out, and based upon that fan's profile, engage with them on where we find that they are most likely to re-engage with us or engage with us. So on the bottom half here, you have our fan-centric database and all the assets that's filling in there from digital media, from shop, from our partners, DirecTV, EA. So that's all going in on a customer level. Top half, your fans coming in either registering or authenticating on our owned and native properties, NFL.com, our fantasy app. Then we bring that all together. You're going to have a customer ID. You're going to have an email address. You're going to have a UUID from Audience Manager. You bring all that together. You do your segmentation, you do your analysis, you then push it back out for data visualization, the bottom, back into your database for email campaigns and push notification. We saw a lot of success with that this year. And then back into Audience Manager, which is the layer just between you, your mobile web pages, your mobile apps, and your desktop to personalize that experience, right? So that's how we bring it all together. And the key thing is here, is how you map those IDs together. And as best as possible, you can get those matching keys, bring it all together to create that view of the fan and say, this is Aiden, this is what Aiden does. Now, just so anyone thinks I'm lying and we haven't done it, this is Joe. Joe is a displaced fan. I spoke about that earlier. That's key when we think about on the league level. He's a Broncos fan, so he had a good year until now they don't have a quarterback. He's good value for a millennial, a presence of kids. He played managed fantasy football with us last year. He purchased a jersey 2 years ago. He's kind of lapsed on the website, as you can see, or on NFL.com fantasy. You can see he kind of dropped off. Now, I'll be honest, he could have come back to us and didn't authenticate, so we may have missed him, but this is what we know about him today. So key thing is he doesn't like email either. I mean, look at the amount of emails he got, didn't even open them or didn't interact with them. So that'll go back to the personalization component. Like, are we sending him the right emails or are we just sending him, emails that aren't relevant to him? And then we get to the money component, which is, what do we do with Joe, right? So Joe played fantasy in a managed league, right, which means he didn't interact with his buddies. He was just playing on his own. So there's a likelihood we can get Joe back to that. He's likely to put some shop again based upon the Broncos win. We could probably, do some merchandise for Broncos with him. He's not going to subscribe again. He subscribed a year ago. I'm not likely to do it. But he's likely to buy a ticket, right? He's in that millennial mindset where they love experiences. They love experiencing things live. We see he's got a good high average income. We see he's got high value to us, and he likes to spend. So I think what we would do with Joe is we would want to offer him something related around fantasy, something related around going to a game. Now, and then the key for us would be a primary ticket offer versus a secondary ticket offer, because obviously we want to get Joe into our club's ecosystem so they can understand Joey's. Unfortunately, he might be an LA Ram now soon, so who knows. But that's when we bring the profile together, and that's how we take that profile and we make it actionable with all the different touch points And then, try keep Joe engaged with us on the platforms he prefers and with the products he prefers. Now, so what we did on the far side was we brought all Joe's touch points in, brought it into the single view, right? Then we took a look at Joe, and now essentially what you got to do is you got to deassemble everything again and push it back out. So you got to go turn Joe back into a customer ID, you got to turn Joe back into an email address, and you got to go turn him back into a mobile ID, and then you got to go take the channels that he's interacting with and then push those offers out to him, and then interact with Joe on those offers. So essentially it's like a three-step process. Assemble, gather the data, assemble Joe's profile, deassemble Joe, and then interact with him, and then obviously the loop continues to go around as you market to him and as you interact with Joe over his life cycle with the league. So then what I found really interesting in this point in time, and I'll tell a funny story, when I left digital media and I went to work in database marketing, as everyone would say to me, people would be like, why are you leaving digital media? Like, you're crazy. I'm like, well, what I saw was the growth of this data, and we weren't doing it. And the other thing that sprung to my mind, I'm like, Facebook's doing a pretty good job with first-party data. I don't know about anywhere else. So that's how I viewed it, right? I viewed it as it was a richer data set that we could use to enhance our fan experiences. And if you think of the world we live in, no longer should you think of your database like when I started, we'd think of our database in these kind of mindsets. Lifetime, we have 75 million people. 3-year active, we have 40 million people. And 1-year active, I have 21 million people. And every presentation, I'd go in and say the same thing. And then I'm like, wait a minute. I can take the email addresses that have opted out of email marketing, and I can push them into Facebook, and I can either market to those people, or I can exclude them, or I can build lookalikes based upon them. I can now do the same with Google. I can now do the same with Conversant, which is an Epsilon partner. So no longer is the data you have in your database not actionable. It's very actionable, right? And that's when I go back to the point about we were data-rich, delivery poor, because we were thinking in this mindset that if I didn't have an email address for this person, I couldn't contact them. Not the case anymore. Not only can you contact them, you can use the data to mine them, and when you do contact, you're giving them experience that's relevant to them. So the universe of the known fans by which you can reach to within your own data set is hugely exponentially changed, right? It's much, much bigger. Granted, I will admit that you're making Facebook richer or making Google richer, but if anyone has a better solution than me than that, or an answer to that question, I'm all ears. But it massively extends your reach, right? And then with your anonymous fans, with the like of Audience Manager, now we have 198 million people coming to our own donated properties. Now, I will say that the 198 is not unique, right? Because we know from our authenticated users, we see 4 UUIDs or cookies per user. So I know that's not unique, but it just shows you the breadth of it. And then obviously what we kind of back enveloped, if we use lookalike modeling, and we use Google, and we use Conversant, and we use Facebook, we can also extend that audience about 120 million. Granted, again, not totally unique, but it's just the concept that you have this rich data set. It's more than just a cookie ID, which could be multiple touch points. It's a single person. And using this data set across all these touch points can really grow your internal database and what you have and how you use it. This slide actually essentially is speaking to our data visualization. I think Ben Gaines is down there. I'm doing this presentation at Adobe, and I wanted to put Domo up there, but they don't like each other, so I just put this one up there. But essentially what this speaks to is we take the data and we push it into data visualization. We visualize what's going on. We visualize Joe. We visualize what's active, not active. And then we try to talk to our stakeholders to tell them what's going on and what's, why we think they should advertise on Instagram, why we think they should do TV, why we think they should do multiple, like who is that target audience and who are you trying to engage. So we use the data, again, is pushed into a visualization platform to bring the data to life. So if you're not a data person, it's easy and quite easy to understand and digest. So I'm just going to get into some examples of what we've done with the data. So again, the top point is like the objective of what it is, the audience that we did, the media we used, and the lift in conversion we saw, right? So Again, youth football is huge for us. We want to build the next generation fans. We want to engage. We want to get parents engaged. We want to get moms engaged. So what we did is, again, with this data set, we used cross-device targeting, right? So something we normally would have done, we would have just normally done a TV ad, left it alone. What we found out was some really interesting things with cross-device targeting. We would find that mothers would interact with us on TMZ at 11 o'clock at night and then sign their kids up for youth football. Who knew? But I mean, this is what happens when you start to dig in the data and you start to do it. And that gave us an 87% lift in conversion, right? So again, it goes about when you know so much about that person already and then you push it into these platforms, your results will improve and you'll start to get these learning, start understanding. And that's how we justify going back to the commissioner and saying, hey, look, we need a paid media budget. We can't talk through in-game TV all the time because we're essentially talking to the people that are engaged with us. If your true focus is to build the next generation of fans, you need to give us the money to go build that next generation of fans. This one I think is flipped, but essentially what we did here was Facebook lookalike modeling. We took our current core active audiences, primarily for league managers. League managers manage their own leagues. And then we pushed into Facebook and look for lookalikes and then target them and got them into our database. Again, very successful. Again, because of the same reason you have that key understanding of who, what they are, and where to target them. But it was definitely very, very effective. This one, we just, again, was driving more parents of youth to our football sites. And again, we used Facebook and YouTube, which YouTube we found very successful with the TrueView. Again, building out that profile and targeting it. We saw a higher lift in traffic through this method than we did when we ran the TV ads. So that'll just tell you, we got more people engaged through these three channels, and we did not a true A/B split test, but we ran TV, and then we ran this mix as best we could, ruling out as much noise we could to see that, okay, if you're going after that audience, this is the best way to reach them. Play 60, this one I found interesting because we used Instagram for the first time. And again, it was to engage girls 13 to 17, which is not usually a demographic you would associate with us. But by using the same method I've talked about, we saw huge engagement with youth football and girls 13 to 17 by just taking the demographic of the platform, matching it with the demographic we have, and then targeting those audiences. This is actually my favorite one because it's everything that we normally don't do, and I talked about it earlier, right? So we took anyone and we created a constant feed that would go to Facebook who signed up for fantasy. And we would exclude them from any advertising that would appear on Facebook or and on site. And essentially that would mean you wouldn't, you ever get that retargeting ad, like why am I getting the same ad again because I've been cookied and gone to the site? We would stop that. I think we probably saved about $200,000 to $300,000 in media spend by doing this. And we also increased the fan experience, which it was all about again, so you don't see the same message. But it's a very, very effective method. And I would say it's the biggest learning I've taken out of the last 3 years, excluding the audience you do not want to target. This one is another personal favorite. What we used to do when you used to come and register with us is you would just get a thank you email. Thank you for Aiden signing up, no differentiation or anything. So what we did is when someone signed up, we took the minimal data points that we had at that point in time, which would be first name, last name, email address, date of birth, favorite team. And we would take them, and based upon those cohorts of demographics, we would deliver different messaging within that email. So Aiden, the 40-year-old man, got Facebook, and Cole, the 14-year-old son of Aiden, got Instagram. Very simple, not rocket science, but the lift in metrics that we saw and got from it was amazing. And when you do start to do it, you see not only the lift in those initial metrics, because what we looked at this is over a 6-week period of time, was the subsequent metrics were more impactful. So like by personalizing, by changing that first touch point, they came back more often, as opposed to if they got the one thing with the 500-long list of what you should do with the NFL, they didn't register, didn't resonate with them. This is reactivating push messaging. We just, like sometimes we get new technology, and I think we go take a step back in time, so we get push notification. What do? We blast everybody. Yeah, everybody gets the same message. Good, go on. what we did was this, is we took the people that weren't active in the fantasy, and we sent them a different message who were active. And lo and behold, the people that were active, we got 24% people to reactivate. So again, it's like sometimes we get new technology, because it's cheaper and easier to use, we take a step back and forget, the basic blocking and tackling and rules in one-on-one. So moving forward, again, going to expand our paid media efforts, continue to automate marketing, we just talked about that. Personalization, I think, is key. The data lake, which I still get embarrassed when I talk about it, is a point in time that we've got to, because we have so much data and we need to use it in order to crunch it together. And then I think testing and optimization is just, you have to test and optimize all the time. Even for the programs we've already ran, we continue testing them, because when you go into a meeting and someone says, well, how do you know that? Oh, we did a test a year ago. They were like, well, how do you know it works now? And I'm like, I don't. Right? So you've got to continue to back test. You've got to continue to keep that back pocket. So when you get that question, I'm like, yeah, no, this program delivers a 30% lift over the norm. And I think that is it. Focus on the fans, focus on your data, and get your playbook ready, and then off you go. And I am done. Thank you. I think we have 4 minutes.
How do you deal with unique and rare challenges like retaining a considerable fan base in the St. Louis area? It's a one-time, or hopefully one-time event. How do you deal with that from a fan marketing perspective?
It's a nice layoff of a question to get first. I think you have to be sensitive to the fact that you just took a team away from an area. I think you then have to, when you communicate to those fans in that area that have been taken away, you can't dodge the 800-pound gorilla in the room, but you have to address it, right? And then you have to start to think about the fans that I have that aren't in a city area, what are they engaged with, and what do they like to do? And then you start to have to think about, how do I message those fans, right? It's not going to be an easy task. I mean, if I was in St. Louis now, I wouldn't be very happy. So I think you have to be very careful about the volume of communications, when you communicate, and make sure you have a loop back also when you do communicate, so you get some feedback. And then you got the flip side, that everyone in LA is going absolutely crazy, so good on that side, bad on the other side. But I guess be very cautionary. We do have a predictive model. We've gone through various iterations of predictive model. The one that I quoted on the side there with the high propensity to do X, Y, and Z, the one we're currently using, I would say we haven't hit a complete home run with a predictive model, because what we do, like I said, with testing, we'll test against business as usual. So Christine and Jennifer, who work with me, will select what they would have done without the predictive model, and we'll test again to see the lift. We've got some lift, some not lift. We've seen some good results, some poor results. So I would say we're still trying to solve that riddle. We do listen to our fans, both on an aggregated level and on a keyword level. We've tried the route of doing the matchbacks to the social ID and with our ID. When Facebook closed its whole ecosystem, it kind of put us back a little bit. We still do matchbacks for Twitter, and I believe Instagram you can still do. Again, what I will say out of the data that we've got from that, I will say it's kind of a nice-to-have data. It hasn't really blown me out of the water in terms of, like, if I have to move 10,000 tickets for a club, or if I have 500,000 fantasy signups to make the goal at the end of the year. It hasn't moved the needle for that. Not yet. Not yet. And that may be more to we haven't found the right formula yet. But yes, we have.
Was this all done with fans in the United States, or was it from fans from all around the world?
It's fans from all around the world. I think our two biggest databases outside of the US are the United Kingdom and Mexico. The issue you get when you start to move out of the US, obviously, is different privacy laws. We saw the whole safe harbor issue that just recently. So that's where we have to be very careful what we can and can't do in terms of international. And it varies greatly from country to country. Like, you go from Germany, where they have like the strictest privacy policies in the world, UK, and you go to Mexico, and it's very bare bones. I would say it is the biggest challenge. I'd also say that it's yeah, it's the biggest challenge, but I think you can navigate around it. You just have to, think a little bit differently where you're going to store the data, how you're going to communicate, what's that touch point. Language becomes an issue. Yeah.
How are you keeping track of all of the results of your scoring or the A/B testing?
I'm going to be honest, I outsource a lot of that to Epsilon. I think the staff that I have, or I call them, and no, this is not a pun, I call them quarterbacks. They know what to do and where to do it and where to get the answers. And then I've outsourced a large component of that to Epsilon who keep track of that for me and deliver the results and do, map out the testing strategy. I don't predominantly do pricing. We are more the marketing team. I think Mr. Highhill that sits over there is one of the people that does ticketed pricing. Then on the subscription product side, we have a group that does that too. We would be the central point for if they want to reach out to fans to understand and do a survey, if they want to analyze the data, but I'm not involved directly in pricing. I'm more the person that will help them get that strategy. Yeah. The primary focus of this is marketing, right? That's the key focus. And when I moved into this position, the one thing I said is I don't want to do reporting again. Been there, done that. I want actionable marketing, right? Teresa's laughing at me. But to that point, yes, there's a lot of other stakeholders that come in that will give them access to data because they will have a different angle and they'll use it. Like David, for example. Anyone else? We're done. Get kicked off. Thank you. I got that one, right?